بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد. الحمد لله الذي شرف من وفقه للعمل بالعلم وزينه بالهداية، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف من خلقه الله عز وجل وعلى آله وصحبه المنزهين عن السفاهة والزلل. أما بعد. Alhamdulillah. We're going to look today at how to study Islamic knowledge. Just briefly, because to attain anything, one has to take the right way of approaching. And one of the best summaries of how to go about studying, and it's a brief summary, but it is very deep, and every time you look at it, you get different insights, is a very short treatise by Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari, who gives 12 counsels on how to go about seeking knowledge. The work has a beautiful title. It's called Al-Lu'lu' al-Nadhim في روم التعلم والتعليم. اللؤلؤ النظيم. What's a lu'lu'? A pearl. And nadhim, it's the carefully arranged pearl. Right? Because nadhm is that which is in order, which is why poetry is called nadhm, because it is ordered and structured. But nadhim, fa'il, conveys the sense of intensity, right, of the meaning. So it's like the carefully ordered pearl. But of course he doesn't say the pearls, right? Because pearls you have many, so arranging many is easier than arranging one. Right? It's a very careful title. It also points to the precision of knowledge. Right? So the title itself is very insightful. In how one pursues study and teaching. And it's by Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari. Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari, whom we've talked about before, our weekly circle of remembrance, we covered the adab of dua by him. Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari, if you say Shaykh al-Islam in many fields, it's understood to be Zakaria al-Ansari. And he gathered some of the highest chains of transmission across the different sciences, because he lived well past 100. And he was teaching from his youth right up till his death. And amongst his students are the likes of Imam al-Suyuti and others. So he summarized what are the conditions for seeking knowledge. And then he goes into definitions of each of the sciences, but the heart of the treatise is its opening, which is, what are the conditions, right? In shurutu ta'limiha wa ta'allumiha, right? What are the conditions of teaching it and learning it? And what is a shart? A condition. What's a condition?
Which an action rests upon but is outside of the action.
Yeah. So a condition is that which an action depends upon, but that is outside of the action itself. That which the soundness or validity of a matter is dependent upon. Right? But is outside that action. So and they say that بطل الشرط بطل المشروط, right? If the condition is annulled, that which is conditional upon it is annulled, right? So knowledge. He said. So he's making a. So these are not just adab. These are not just proper manners, but these are conditions. And he says they're 12. Right. The first, of course, is intention. So he says, أما شروط تعليمها وتعلمها فاثنا عشر. So as for the conditions of teaching and learning knowledge, they're 12. Right? They're 12. أحدها أن يقصد به ما وضع ذلك العلم له. Right? The first is that one seek through it that which the knowledge was placed for. And what was it placed for? Right? When we're talking about ilm, this is ilmuddin, knowledge of the religion. And what is the deen itself? Ala lillahi dinul khalis. Truly, Allah's alone is pure religion. Right? Truly, Allah's alone is sincere religion. And all that it contains. Right? So the intention is Ala lillahi dinul khalis, right? From the Quran. Truly Allah's alone is pure religion. It's sincere religion. It's true religion. Right? So that's what one seeks through knowledge. Right? And this is the relationship between deen and ikhlas, as we'll see in lesson 1 of the foundations class, is a fundamental relationship. That what is the essence of religion is that you be for Allah. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. They have not been commanded except that they serve Allah, making their religion purely, truly, sincerely His alone. So this is the starting point, and that's something. It's something that is easy to overlook, because knowledge has a ladha. It has a joy, it has a taste, and it can be very appealing on its own. But it is not the point. That's why, and much has come in warning about that. فَلَا يَقْصِدُ بِهِ غَيْرَ ذَلِكَ. So one does not intend through knowledge other than that. Neither knowledge itself, because it's the means. And the means without its end is meaningless. Nor does one seek any other external meaning. And he gives examples. كَاكْتِسَابِ مَالٍ, such as earning some money. So you treat it like a job, in the sense of, why are you studying? Well, I'll become an imam. And you're placing the bets on the community, paying the imams really well in the future, because economics would appear to indicate that if there's a scarcity of imams, then economics would appear to indicate that they would be paid well. But community realities would appear to indicate to the contrary, but that's a separate matter. So, such as earning some money. Or more realistic and dangerous, أو جاه, or jah. What's jah? It got nothing to do with Rastafarianism. Status. Right? Right? To have status and prestige. There's one student, I was asking, have you studied logic? He said, yeah, alhamdulillah, I studied with Shaykh so-and-so and Shaykh so-and-so as well. I asked him the first issue that comes up in the text in logic, and he didn't know. Nisbatul al-fadhi lil-ma'ani. So I think, I gave him an uncle advice on the spot. About, beta, take it seriously. He said, but you don't really need this stuff. Because if you're on the lecture circuit, I figure, it's not that. So that's one of the ways that knowledge is lost. And also, it destroys the person. Right? There's many hadiths warning about the person who seeks knowledge for other than Allah. Right? That there'll be 3 people who will be punished on the day of judgment in front of everyone before anyone else is punished. Who are they? Yeah, there's a person of knowledge who sought knowledge for other than Allah, right? To show off with it, right? And the mujahid who fought for other than Allah, and the one who gave in charity, who did so for other than Allah, to be praised. And they will be sent, they'll be dispatched to hell. Why? Because these are people ostensibly serving the deen, but they're doing it for dunya. They're doing it for self. And that is dangerous. And why is it dangerous? It is personally dangerous. So it goes against the rights of Allah, because religion is Allah's alone. It is going against the rights of Allah. You are wronging yourself because Allah sent this for you to benefit from it, but you benefit from it in the akhirah. So you lost out by not seeking its benefit. So you wronged yourself. But also, this is the basis of all harm in society. And the Prophet ﷺ warned that one of the categories of people that he feared most for his ummah were people of knowledge who sought it, who either were ignorant or who sought knowledge and conveyed knowledge for other than Allah. And there's many warnings about that. أو مغالبة خصم, or to defeat your adversary, someone you disagree with. So you decide to research something simply to prove someone else wrong, not for the sake of truth. أو مكابرة, right? Or just to make your own point, to arrogate yourself. Right? So you made a mistake, so instead of saying, yes, I was wrong, what do? You just defend your mistake, right, out of mukabara. Just, this is how I meant it, or this is what it is, even though you know you're wrong. So this is the first aspect. And so the intention is something that one needs to actively review and renew, right, on an ongoing basis. That why am I studying this? And a practical way, if you look, is, for example, Imam al-Haddad has the intentions for seeking knowledge. And we have them on the Seekers Hub site. If you look intentions, knowledge, Haddad, you'll find it. But it's something to always reflect on. Why am I seeking knowledge in general? Why am I seeking this particular subject? And to be clear about that. And to renew the intention every time you begin. Right? Every time you begin. So that's the first. Any questions about this before we move on? Go ahead.
Can you expand on the taste of knowledge that could derail one's true intention?
Yeah, so the taste of knowledge, the ladha, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed, out of His mercy, has placed the things that benefit one, He has placed a joy in them. Why? So that we pursue them. So that we pursue them. That applies, we need food to survive. And the wisdom, amongst the wisdoms of it having taste, is that if it didn't taste good, people probably wouldn't eat enough. And if they didn't eat enough, they might not survive. Or they wouldn't survive. Similarly, other desires, all the desires, are related to things that are personal or human needs. The physical desires are there. Why? Because otherwise, human beings would not procreate. And if they didn't procreate, humanity wouldn't survive. But those desires, just like desires have a taste, have a joy. Similarly, other matters of benefit to us also have that. Wealth. Right? When you acquire wealth, there's a sense of satisfaction. Why? Because if you didn't, people wouldn't pursue it. And if they didn't pursue it, they may not attain the benefit of this life. But all these joys are connected to tests. Because the way of deen is balance. The way of deen is balance. Because if you go to an excess in it, you'll harm yourself. Just as if you go to an excess with the desire for food, or the desire for physical satisfaction, or the desire for wealth. Right? Any of these desires. But similarly, knowledge, being of benefit, has a joy related to it. You learn something. You feel a sense of satisfaction. And that's good. There's a positive satisfaction, which is if you have gratitude in it, and you seek the right ways of expressing that gratitude. لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you are grateful, meaning to Allah, we will surely grant you increase. Right? But the gratitude, so the joy is supposed to be expressed through gratitude. Right? The joy of knowledge, the taste of knowledge, is also expressed through gratitude, which is that you recognize it as being from Allah, and you seek an increase in it in the way that will be pleasing to Allah. And you ask yourself, how do I express my gratitude to Allah? Through this. And one of the aspects of that is to always praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you understand something, praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. If you're stuck in something, don't say, okay, how do I figure it out? إِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ. If you ask Allah. So it's part of being sincere, the practical sincerity in knowledge, is that if you learn something, what do? You praise Allah. فَمَنْ وَجَدَ خَيْرًا فَلْيَحْمَدِ اللَّهِ. That you thank Allah for the blessing of knowledge. And at the end, you begin with Bismillah, and you end when you say Alhamdulillah, you don't just say it with the tongue, but you feel a deep sense of gratitude. When you finish reading something, you don't say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin, and you put it away. Alhamdulillah is not, here I stop, but you feel gratitude for the gift of knowledge. But then, if you are stuck, for example, what do? You turn to Allah. You turn to Allah. إِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ. If you ask Allah. Make dua. You stop. Very interestingly, Ibn Abidin, inshallah you'll get to study it. Ibn Abidin's treatise on menstruation, his commentary on Imam Birgivi's text, there's an area in that fiqh that is particularly complex. So in the middle of the treatise, he pauses and makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he proceeds. Well, it's complicated. So that's part of it. If you're stuck, what do? Pray Salat al-Hajjah. Right? Pray Salat al-Hajjah, the 2 rak'ahs of the prayer of need. If you understand something that was difficult to you, pray 2 rak'ahs of the prayer of thanks. Okay? So that's a sign that you're seeking it with the right, with sincerity. The second,
Just a quick question.
Go ahead.
About
Go ahead.
intentions. Can we have like intention to serve Allah and also the compassion for people, right? Compassion and really care and concern for people. That one.
yeah. So can you have the intention of serving, of learning for the sake of Allah and to serve people? Yes, that's one of the intent. That's a derivative intention, right? Because why do you have compassion for people? As a means for seeking the pleasure of Allah, right? Because they're Allah's creation, right? It is not compassion on its own. Actually, compassion on its own actually rationally makes no sense. Right? As the Sahaba were smart. The Battle of the Trench, what did they sing with the Prophet ﷺ? Yeah. Allahumma lawlaka mahtadayna. Oh Allah, were it not for you, we would not have been guided. Wala tasaddaqna wala sallayna. And were it not for you, we would not have given in charity. And we would not have prayed. Because actually, if you're an intelligent human being, that's why some of the most intelligent human beings are some of the worst people on earth. Honestly, right? Why? Because it doesn't make sense, right? Ayn Rand has a point, right? Honestly, she's totally wrong. She has just one point. She lost the whole point, right? Is that if you just think about it, like if it's just you in this limited life, why should you do anything for anyone else? Of course, it's short-sighted, but it would. The Hanafi say that's qiyas. That's primary line of thinking of the unenlightened mind. It would make sense. But there's a wider consideration. Compassion on its own doesn't really make sense, which is why most people, bereft of higher meaning, most people are not compassionate. But that is how you seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's one of the most important meanings of that. خَيْرُ النَّاسِ أَنْفَعُهُمْ لِلنَّاسِ. The best of people are those of most benefit to people. Why? Because that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because this al-khalq iyalullah. Right? In another narration, creation are the dependents of Allah. And the most beloved of them are those of most benefit to Allah's creation. Because they are Allah's. Right? Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman. The merciful are shown mercy by the All-Merciful. Irhamu man fil ard, yarhamkum man fis sama. Be merciful to those on earth, and the Lord of the heavens will be merciful to you. So that's the first. The second is ثانيها أن يقصد العلم الذي يقبله طبعه. That one seek the knowledge that one's temperament accepts. Because we believe that people have temperaments. They have tendencies. Even if they might not identify their temperaments well. إذ ليس كل أحد يصلح لتعلم العلوم. Because not everyone is fit to learn the religious sciences. ولا كل من يصلح لتعلمها يصلح لجميعها. And not everyone who is fit to learn the religious sciences fit to learn all of them. Some people shouldn't learn. Right? Different people have different aptitudes. So how does one learn one's aptitude? One of the aspects is to consult. Because you haven't lived before. Right? And there are those who have, so one should consult. Right? In general, about what to direct oneself to life and whether to pursue the path of knowledge. And here, of course, it does not mean learning what you have to learn in life, but to dedicate yourself to seeking knowledge, to the path of knowledge. But then in dedicating oneself to the path of knowledge, would you dedicate, not everyone can master every science. I mean, there's a certain amount that everyone needs to learn, even if it's a difficult subject. But you can't specialize in everything. One, it's not practical. And some people have more aptitude for certain things than others. يرحمكم الله. بل كل ميسر لما خلق له. Rather, and then he quotes the Quran, the words of the Prophet ﷺ, each is facilitated for that which they were created for. And facilitated here does not mean that you just cop out, right? But that the way of benefit in it and through it is facilitated for you, right? But but how do you judge what is facilitated for you? What can you attain without undue difficulty, and what you can see the fruits of, right? The fruits of, the benefits of. And so you consider what you study depending on what your temperament is, what your inclination is, what you can attain with benefit, or what are the circumstances. But also, what would you be able to personally benefit from given your inclinations, your circumstances, the opportunities that are there? And what would you be able to benefit others through practically? And because a lot of times people have pipe dreams. So I want to master Hanbali fiqh, but you've never seen a Hanbali scholar. So why aren't you attending whatever classes that are available? So I'm waiting to find a Hanbali teacher. What are you doing to find it? Well, I've not found one yet. I want to study such and such. Well, why don't you begin with what's facilitated? And how do you determine? One of the keys, underlying keys, is consultation. The third is if you learn something, he says, ثالثها أن يعلم غاية ذلك العلم. Anything you study, you should know the purpose of the subject that you're studying. And here the purpose is what is the practical purpose? Because the ultimate purpose is the pleasure of Allah. But what is the practical purpose? Why do we study this? Like, what is sought through it? Right? So you ask someone, okay, they're studying grammar. So, okay, why are you studying grammar? Because it's Arabic grammar, no kidding. But why are you studying it? Because it's important. Why is it important? And they don't know. Right? So one should have clarity on that. Why? Because only if you have purpose will you have resolve. Right? Only if you have purpose will you have resolve and determination and clarity and conviction in your pursuit. And there's the first principle of fiqh. The fuqaha summarized certain maxims, certain qawa'id, and they're more respected in the Islamic legal tradition than legal maxims are in the Western legal tradition, where they're kind of disparaged, unfairly perhaps. But maybe they're also disparaged because they try to be sophisticated about them, and most of the important principles were expressed in Latin, and I think people got fed up of them. But that's a separate story. Fundamental principle of fiqh, but it is broader, it relates to knowledge, it relates to life. The first principle of fiqh is al-umuru bimaqasidiha. Matters are by their motives. الأمور بمقاصدها. And the motive, the maqsid here is what you seek through it. Matters are judged by what is sought through them. And that has many legal implications.
Can you explain that, Shaykh? Like, I don't grasp that properly.
Yeah, so how do you judge something? You judge it by what was sought through it. Right? The reality of something, and it really is an application of the words of the Prophet ﷺ, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are by their intentions. And what's the intention? Is what you seek through something. Okay? So how worthy is what you're doing is why are you doing it? So someone came and drops off a microwave for the Syrian newcomers. So you ask Sister Selma, why did you drop off the microwave? I said, well, Sister Zubaydah dropped off a microwave. Why shouldn't I? Right? So two people came and they dropped off microwaves. But one did it out of concern for Allah's creation. I want to seek the pleasure of Allah by assisting someone else. I leave aside the issue of radiation, whatever. It's like, microwaves aren't haram. They're permissible. If you have a good intention, you'll be rewarded. The potential harms from it are secondary. They're not direct. People aren't cooked in microwaves. So but we don't have one, but anyways. Right? So two people dropped off microwaves. One had a high motive. They're seeking Allah. They want to be of benefit to others. The other person did exactly the same thing, but why did they do it? Because she's doing it. And why should I look less than her? Right? But so there is the higher purpose, but also the practical purpose. The practical purpose. That what you see, what will you gain through this? Right? What is the benefit in this? And if you don't know the benefit, the gain through something, you won't sustain its pursuit. And why is this? He says, لِيَكُونَ عَلَى ثِقَةٍ مِّنْ أَمْرِهِ. So that one has thiqah, one has confidence about one's affairs. That why am I doing this? And you should be able to answer that question. So it's important to study. But you should know both the higher purpose of study, sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking the pleasure of Allah, out of love for Allah, out of longing for Allah, seeking Allah's closeness, seeking His eternal reward, etc. But also practically, in this, why are you studying this particular thing? To know the particular benefits of that subject. And this is something that the ulama always talk about in the beginning of everything. And it helps to include this in one's intention, right? That one shouldn't just have a generic intention for study, but it also helps to review one's intentions for each particular subject. That why am I studying this? Because one forgets, right? The human being has been created hasty. خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ عَجُولًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, the human has been created hasty. So you take things for granted. Yeah, I know. For Allah, and you move on. But then you forget why you're doing it. Okay? So someone is seeking the spiritual path and they say, okay, I'm attending the gatherings of Shaykh so-and-so. Why? Because he's in town. So why are you going? Well, it looked kind of bad if I didn't go. Right? And after a while, what happens? The human being tends towards habits rather than purpose. Because habits are comfortable. Because habits don't require choices. And choices actually are difficult. Right? Because if you look at human behavior, the easiest way of functioning in life is to have habits. And most choices we make habitually in life. If you think from when you wake up to when you go to sleep, we're creatures of habits, which is why habits are difficult to change. Choices require willpower, which is why they're difficult, which is why you shouldn't test your willpower too much. If you force yourself to make too many difficult choices, your willpower will be drained. But intention strengthens willpower. Right? And the believer does nothing. The believer has routines, but they're purposeful routines. And having purposeful routines actually strengthens willpower. Because one is doing nothing out of mere habit. Nothing is mujarradu adatin. Right? One's adat are ibadat. One's habits are acts of worship. They say, binniyat tanqalibu al-adatu ibadat. Right? Through intentions, one's habits turn into acts of worship. So everything one has a sense of purpose. You don't just brush your teeth because that's what you do in the morning. You make intentions. You want to seek the pleasure of Allah by brushing your teeth. So you have the higher purpose, but also you consider the practical purpose. Why are you brushing your teeth? Just because, no. You pause. You're doing this for the practical purposes as well. Right? Seeking the pleasure of Allah thereby. So even the little things, and what this kind of renewing intentions and everything, it actually strengthens willpower. Because if your habits, they're purposeful, then when you have a choice, you're directed by purpose. So, and that's one of the characteristics of a personal knowledge. They don't do anything just like that. And they say, be very careful when a person of knowledge asks you why. Because they're trying to figure you out. Right? Someone asks, so why are you attending this class? Think before you speak. Because they're seeing like, what are you all about? And they may not comment, but they will have done an assessment. And they may be actually asking you why indirectly. By asking how, for example. How do you find the class? Because very often, the other fundamental questions give insight on the direct questions. So this is important, knowing the purpose of the subject and incorporating that into why you seek it. Right? The fourth condition is that if you know the purpose of any subject, then in your pursuit of it, you should fulfill its purpose. How? أن يستوعب ذلك العلم من أوله إلى آخره. That you have complete understanding of that subject from its beginning to its end. And logicians rejoice. تصورا وتصديقا. Right? In conceiving of it and in accepting it. Conceiving of it, the tasawwur is that you know what it is. You know what it is. You can conceptualize it. What is it? And you know why it is that way. So you accept that it is sound. Right? What is tasdeeq? Okay. Tasawwur is that, for example, if you say Zayd is standing. Okay? So tasawwur is you can conceive, okay, that's Zayd. This is standing. Tasdeeq is when you conceive of Zayd, you conceive of standing, say, yes, Zayd is standing. Right? It's confirmation that yes, it's true. So if we say Allah is all powerful, you say, okay, I know. What do we mean by Allah? What do we mean by powerful? That's tasawwur. That is to conceive of the concepts. And then to confirm it, that's tasdeeq.
Like affirmation, maybe, right? Like
Yeah,
affirmation.
yeah. I'm keeping away from terminology. So you can conceive of the things and you have accepted them. Right? You have accepted them. So, for example, if you ask a simple question to somebody studying Arabic grammar, what is nahu? So you know this is nahu, and you know, you accept that this is what it is. Why? Because you understand it. Right? So you know what the issues are, and you understand why they are the way they are. So you can say, yes, that's the way it is. So and central to that is you know the definitions of things. Right? Your definitions before details. Right? They say definition before details and descriptions. So in anything, you know what the things are. And this is the adab of a student of knowledge, is that the right of knowledge is that you master it. The fifth, so how would you master a subject? How would you know it with clarity? How would you know it with clarity, with confidence, with confirmation that you know that yes, this is correct? One of the keys to that, خامسها أن يقصد فيه الكتب الجيدة المستوعبة لجميع الفن. The fifth adab is choosing the right books to study. Right? Is books that are reliable, that are comprehensive, that are clear. Right? And jayyid, in Arabic, what does jayyid mean? Good. But you should look up what the root meaning of jayyid is, and what is jud. Right? Right? And it's fascinating. Right? And what's the opposite of what's jayyid? Right? Hmm? No, it's because the good is that which is characterized by sound qualities and praiseworthy qualities. Its opposite is the radi, is the lowly. Just that which is characterized by undesirable qualities. Right? So you choose the right books in each subject at two levels. One, what you study, and number two, what you read and refer to. And in every subject, those are two questions to ask about what you study. Right? Like what, if I'm going to study is what you do with a teacher. Right? So if you're going to choose what to study, you choose the right texts to study. But also, a serious student would also read along with their study. But what you read and what you refer to, right? Like if you're looking at researching something further or understanding something more, you choose the right books to study and the right books to read along with your study. Works that are comprehensive, that are reliable, that are clear, and that are at the right level, given where you are at in your studies. Because sometimes it's obvious, right? Like what's the best dictionary of the English language? Right? Now let's just say, for the argument's sake, the Oxford English Dictionary, which is one of the masterpieces of the English language. It's amazing. And what was it? it took over 5 decades for it to be compiled. Like when it was finally compiled, this amazing human effort. But someone who just, a Syrian newcomer, they say, I need an English dictionary. You say, okay, the Oxford English Dictionary, here's 30 volumes. They won't even be able to find the word they're looking for. Similarly, if you have a question related to grammar, they're huge, huge books, but in the beginning, you'll be confused by them. And that applies to every subject. Right? So when you're still a refugee or a newcomer to that subject, you fled from ignorance to that subject, know where to begin. Right? Know where to begin. And since you don't know where to begin, you should consult. And I accidentally skipped number 5. No. I did number 5? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that was number 5, correct? So, but this applies both to study, right? And also, very importantly, what you read along with that or what you refer to. And it's most important at the beginning of any subject. How you begin, right? Because you starting off on the right foot helps you remain on this right path, right? Man ashraqat bidayatuhu ashraqat nihayatuhu. Whoever's beginning is illumined, their end is illumined. So the first steps matter a lot. The 6th is أن يقرأ على شيخ مرشد أمين ناصح لا يستبد بنفسه وذكائه. That one, choose the teacher carefully. Right? So you choose the right things to study and you choose the teacher carefully. And they should be على شيخ مرشد. A sheikh is someone who, in the Arabic language, what does sheikh mean? Someone who is senior, someone who has seniority. And in the general sense of the word sheikhucha is they're senior in age. It's past the age of 40, right? At least, if not older. But generally, under 40, you're not a sheikh, right? Linguistically, in terms of age, you're still young, right? And it could be, it normally refers to elderly more than that, right? But a sheikh in a subject is someone who's reached recognized maturity in that subject. A sheikh is not just a term that's thrown around. Sometimes people throw it to anyone who's visited the Middle East for a little while, right? I was living in Jordan. In Jordan, basically, anybody who's wearing a thobe, they say, Shaykh, عندي سؤال. Like taxi drivers, favorite question of religious taxi driver. Like, why do you think I'm a Shaykh? It's just like, بين عليك. It's says obvious. Why? Just like, yeah, you don't need to fulfill these 12 conditions. Just buy yourself the right clothes, right? So you have to be careful. Right? So a sheikh, who is it? Someone of recognized maturity, right, in that subject. Right? Of whose knowledge is sound, it is recognized, and it has attained maturity. Right? So being a sheikh has also the sense of they have experience. And who's murshid, who shows you the right, who's concerned about showing you the right way. What is rushd? Rushd is right guidance. Arshadahu means to show someone the right way. So they're not just approaching, okay, this is what it is. Ma salama. Like a friend of mine, he gave this amazing khutbah. I wasn't there, but related by a friend of mine. He gave this amazing khutbah. And this guy came afterwards and said, Shaykh, I want to repent to Allah. Can I talk to you? I said, you know what? I'm kind of hungry right now. Could we meet some other time? And he was walking away. So a mutual friend of ours is here, grabbed my friend and he said, listen, I'm not going to feed you until you answer his question. Of course, Zahir could have answered it just as well, but and that's not being a murshid, right? Like of being concerned for showing people the right way, right? So the murshid, ameen, trustworthy, right? Trustworthy. How? One, their knowledge itself is sound. They are themselves a person of uprightness. Because that's a condition for accepting someone's word on something religious. That they have sound knowledge of it, and so the knowledge they have itself is trustworthy, and secondly, they can be trusted with that knowledge because of their uprightness, their established uprightness. So you don't just go and click on a video, looks like a good guy, and start listening. No, right? You always verify who is it before you listen to anybody. And people do it all the time. They download something, say, "Oh, that sounds really great." Why? Because it's got such a nice voice. Right? And that's not a criteria in any subject. It's just foolishness. In dunya and particularly in deen. So ameen, nasih, of sincere concern. They want good for you. Nasiha is talabul khair fi haqq al-ghayr, seeking good with respect to another. لا يستبد بنفسه. They don't just rely on their own understanding. Right? They don't have independent understanding. Rather, they see their knowledge as an inheritance. Right? Because that's what the Prophet ﷺ said. Al-ulama warathatul anbiya. The scholars are inheritors of the prophets. So they see their understanding, like what is their duty? Their duty is to be vessels. They gained it from its source and they convey it as they received it, applying it to the particular circumstances, but there's that sense of continuity. So and very dangerous, alarm bells, if, someone said, well, the way I see it, this is what's correct. No, because religion is that which the messenger came with. How do we know what the messenger came with? Through these chains of transmission, right? No, وَذَكَائِهِ. Nor do they just rely on their intelligence alone. That if they don't understand something, well, let me figure it out. But they go back to the established foundations of the religion. And a sign of that is that they always consult other scholars. One, those senior to them, and they consult their peers. They consult their students. And you see even the most preeminent scholars, right? And it's like there's this amazing thing I was blessed to hear from Shaykh Adib Kallas, which is amazing about I used to always pester him about the fate of non-Muslims. Like again and again and again. Then one day I cracked the nut. Okay? And he gave this amazing response. So I recorded it. And I've shared it many times. Once I mentioned it to Habib Ali. Just, he says, you heard it from Shaykh Adib? I said, yes. He said, could you give that to me in write? Could you repeat that? I said, yes. And he tried to memorize it on the spot. And he repeated it. I am nobody. This is Habib Ali. He said, could you send me the exact expression? I said, okay. So I had to test it out. I opened the subject with Shaykh Hamza. This is one of the RISs. I opened the subject with Shaykh Hamza. He mentioned some beautiful things. So I said, I heard this beautiful thing from Shaykh Adib Qillas. And I mentioned it. That's amazing. So you heard that yourself? I said, yeah. I said, could you repeat that? And he said exactly the same. Could you repeat that? I said, yes. So he repeated it. He said, could you send that to me? So I actually forwarded the email I sent to Habib Ali, just removed the message information. Okay. But that's that's a sign of knowledge, right? That it's not just, well, this is what that they're always seeking, right? And they're always connected to those senior to them, their peers, and even those junior to them. They don't just rely on themselves or just their own mere understanding. The seventh, and this is very important, and we've been emphasizing this a lot, but it's easily ignored. أن يذاكر به الأقران والأنظار. That one review knowledge with one's companions and those at a similar level, right? With fellow students. Al-Aqran, the Qareen is the one who's with you. Al-Anzar, those who are at a similar level in knowledge and who have similar concern. But why? طلبا للتحقيق, seeking تحقيق, seeking realization in the knowledge, right? Seeking to verify their understanding, right? Seeking to make true their understanding, right? To make it muhaqqaq, to realize it and make it firm. لا للمغالبة, not to outdo others. I'll show her that I understand this chapter better. بل للمعاونة على الإفادة والاستفادة, rather to assist one another in benefiting and in seeking benefit. And that's one of the adab with one's companions in knowledge, is one seeks to assist one another, not to outdo one another. So if you find a benefit, you share it, but with the right intention. The eighth, any questions about this? Okay. So a sign of intelligent students is that they study with others as well. They review with other people. Okay. And fools try to go it alone. Okay. Okay. The eighth, إذا حصل ذلك العلم لا يضيعه بإهماله ولا يمنعه مستحقه. That if one attains knowledge of a subject, and this is whether it's complete knowledge or even learns a certain amount of that knowledge, then one does not lose it, one does not squander it by ignoring it. How do you squander it? By ignoring it? By not reviewing it. By not reviewing it. By not acting upon it. Whether in one's practice, or by outward practice of the knowledge, and some knowledge entails outward practice. And of course the heart, is one of the limbs as well. So if it's knowledge of character and conduct, that one's practicing it in one's upholding it in one's character. But rational knowledge is, right, by practicing it in one's thinking. There's no point in studying logic if you don't apply it in your thinking. There's no point to usul al-fiqh, the principles of fiqh, if you don't try to think through fiqh using those principles, etc. There's no point in studying the science of hadith unless you try to apply that in your dealing with hadith.
Sure. The previous one, number 7, like reviewing with fellow students and things like that, like compatibility with the teacher and compatibility with students and other people, is that covered here?
Yeah, so, there are qualities of the kind of study companion that one seeks, right? That one seeks someone who has, who has goals that are similar to one's own, or who has higher resolve. One tries to keep company of those who would urge one towards higher resolve, right? Not to seek the blind so that you can be the one, the one-eyed person who's king. Everyone says, look, he knows, and you're half ignorant, but you just feel really smart because you're surrounded by fools. So one doesn't squander the knowledge that one attains by ignoring it, by not reviewing it, and by not acting upon it. وَلَا يَمْنَعُهُ مُسْتَحِقَّهُ, and one does not prevent it from one who deserves it. So when you learn something, the knowledge has rights upon you. And one of the rights of the knowledge, firstly, you learn it properly. Secondly, you act upon it. Thirdly, you convey it as it deserves to be conveyed. And this is very important. Right? So you learn it properly. Number 2, you strive to, you apply it. But it's the right of knowledge, the right of Allah upon you with respect to that knowledge, is that you convey it. After understanding it, with applying it, but that you convey it. How do you convey it? There are conditions, and the primary condition is that you have permission from your teacher or teachers. Right? And he says, why? Because of the hadith that has come. لِخَبَرْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ عِلْمًا نَافِعًا كَتَمَهُ وَكَتَمَهُ أَلْجَمَهُ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ بِلِجَامٍ النَّارِ or بِلِجَامٍ مِّن نَّارِ. Whoever gains beneficial knowledge and then they conceal it from others, they keep it from others, Allah will throttle them, will chain them on the day of resurrection with a chain of fire. Because knowledge is mercy, and you're holding back benefit from others. And one of the things many of the Sahaba did on their deathbed, there's some hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that they hadn't had the opportunity to convey yet. And on their deathbed, they said, I heard this from the Messenger. People were like, right now you're dying. They said, well, I didn't have the opportunity to convey this yet. Right? Out of fear of this reality. But also, وَلَا يُؤْتِيهِ غَيْرَ مُسْتَحَقِّهِ or غَيْرَ مُسْتَحِقِّهِ, and one does not give it to someone who does not deserve it. Someone who will be harmed by it, or someone who will be a means of harm through it. Right? And it's come from Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam that لا تعلق الدر في رقاب الخنازير, that do not hang pearls on the necks of pigs. Okay? And there are people who have ill intent in studying the religious sciences. Many academics are seeking it for very dangerous purposes. So one should be smart about it in that sense, but also at a practical level, that is this the knowledge that someone needs? So you want to review your logic. So you grab someone who doesn't know how to pray. You could have taught them how to pray, but say, let me teach you some logic. And that's not what they need right now. Someone who is confused about the basics of the deen. And instead you teach them something that will... Let me explain to you why there's different wording in hadith. Because you want to review, one of the derivative science in hadith is mukhtaliful hadith. Why do hadiths differ? And the person's like confused about the science of about hadith itself. They don't even know what it is. So this is... and how would one know that? That's part of having that relationship with one's teachers, to know when one teaches, when one conveys the knowledge, how one conveys it, to whom one conveys it, and with what motive, with what intention one conveys it.
Is it really up to us to decide who deserves it or not?
No, but you don't judge people bad. That's a good question, right? But it's not... I mean, sometimes you have to be careful, right? You have to be careful because there are some people who have ill motives, right? Like if you go to the Middle East, if you spend time in the Middle East, there's all these people who come around like these academic types, right? And actually, there's a whole industry of studying Islam, right? And many of them have freaky motives. Some directly, someone's working for some government agency or something, right? And why? Because they just want to, for whatever motive. Or, so one should, and so, sometimes you could have positive influence, but if in those situations, you should consult, right? Because sometimes, and unfortunately, there's a lot of Muslims, for example, who've gone into academia and stuff, and you could end up spending a lot of time teaching them something, but they're not learning it to benefit themselves. They're not really learning it to benefit someone else. They're just doing it to write some academic paper on something, whereas you could have spent that time instead with someone who really wanted to benefit, right? So you're not thinking ill of them, but if you have a limited amount of time, who you should choose to teach someone who would benefit from it and who would be able to benefit others. Sometimes there's someone you could, especially if you have experience, you could help, direct them better, right? But usually, if you don't have experience in those, one, you should consult, or you should pass them on to someone who has more experience, because those things require more wisdom. But when one's starting off, okay, but this is an area where there's a lot of opportunity. Like if one learns something properly, there's a lot of people who are in need of the basics, and one should consider how one could do it, and that's where consultation is empowering. Right? The ninth is أن لا يعتقد في علم أنه حصل منه مقدارا لا تمكن الزيادة عليه فذلك نقص وحرمان. Is that one not believe about any subject that one has attained of it an extent that you cannot gain more of. And that you never believe that you've learned enough in any subject, because that itself is a deficiency, and it's being debarred, because there's always more to learn. Sometimes you may stop in a subject at a certain amount, but not because there's nothing more to learn, but because that's how much you need. But you have that sense, well, there is more to learn, but this is how much I need right now. But no, there's nothing more to learn about logic. It's all... No, you may stop at a certain amount, but you never think that you've learned enough. Why? Because what is knowable is beyond human limit. Okay? وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. Above everyone of knowledge is one more knowing. The 10th, أن يعلم أن لكل علم حدا فلا يتجاوزه ولا ينقص عنه. and to know that each subject has limits that one does not exceed nor fall short of. Right? And the limits are of two types. Okay? The limits are of two types. If you imagine knowledge to be a road, right? It has limits on the side and it has limits within. Right? So that each knowledge, it has a certain scope. Right? So you don't apply logic to the study of spirituality. Right? Because that's going outside the limits of logic. Because logic is not the science of the heart, it's how you reason. But spirituality is about the state of the heart with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's not what logic is about. So you don't exceed the limits of that externally. Right? So it's like a road. Right? There's limits demarcating it, but within the road, there's also lanes. Right? So right now you're a beginner, so you may be in the slow lane. So don't try to drive in the fast lane because you're not there yet. Like you have to learn where you are in that. And then there's also other limits on the road of knowledge. There's places where you need to stop. Right? To give right of way. Right? There are red lights. There's dead end. You have to know how to navigate each subject, and you don't exceed the limits. You don't take the knowledge out. You don't step out of the road of that knowledge, and you stay within the right lane, and you know where to stop. Right? And you know how to navigate. Right? Otherwise, you'll be astray. And in that, you need a GPS. Right? You need directions. And that's what the teacher is for. Right? The 11th is ألا يدخل علما في علم. ألا يدخل علما في علم آخر. لا في تعلم ولا في مناظرة. لأن ذلك يشوش الفكر. Is that one not wrongfully mix one subject with another. Not in learning it and not in debating it. Because that confuses thinking. And here, yudakhil is wrongfully mixing. You're trying to understand what is grammar. So you start, before you understand the thing on it by its own standards, you start applying fiqh to it. So you'll be confused. A classical example of that in the Islamic sciences is in the science of tajweed. The foundational text is the Muqaddimah al-Jazariyya, Ibn al-Jazari's introduction to tajweed. It's like the starting point of the science of tajweed. And he says in the beginning that this science is an absolute obligation or an incumbent duty. So if you immediately jump, what is he talking about? The rules of tajweed. Now, when he says it's an absolute duty, they said wujuban wujuban fanniyan. It's a duty in this science, which is a science of recitation. That for you to recite properly, you have to apply these rules, because otherwise it's not considered sound recitation. When he's talking about duty here, wujub, he's not talking about wujub shar'i. He's not talking about fiqh. He's not talking about the fiqhi duty, which is that which is obligatory. That if you don't do that which is fard or wajib, what's the ruling? You're sinful. Right? But if you recite without the full rules of tajweed, are you sinful? No. In our time, of course, because people just try to figure things out on their own, there's many people who go to one excess saying that reciting even one verse of Quran without the full rules of tajweed is haram. It's a major sin. And they quote that line, which is excessive. Of course, there's others who say that the whole science of tajweed is a bid'ah, which is also crazy, right? So you don't mix subjects in that way, particularly in conceiving of it. Each subject is conceived of using its principles. And when you discuss it, you don't mix things together. Right? And there's many examples of that. But of course, once you understand something, then you see what are relationships between subjects. But for that, until you are trained, it's better to think of each subject on its own. And if you find linkages, etc., you consult about them. But what you find is the scholars, don't like the student to get too insanely creative, right? It's like if you're learning calligraphy, each type of calligraphy has its principles, how you apply it. Now, if you become a real master in one type of khat, you could bring in some artistic flair from another one, whatever. But if you go to your teacher, over here, could I bring that swooshing kaf from the other thing? Maybe you could. But they'll say, get this right first. Because if you mix them together before the right time, you'll have a mess. You'll have a mess. But once you understand it properly, of course, the sciences all feed into each other and are interlinked. And it's good to have those thoughts, but it's also important to have discipline. Right? I had many failed attempts at learning the martial arts. Never wanted to, but there's people in my family who didn't want me to learn. But there's always one of my friends who said, okay, when can I learn the flying kick? Every time, or whatever kind of kick. Every time the instructor would knock the guy down as he was speaking. I learn the basic moves first before you try to do fancy things. Right? But yeah, aspire to those fancy things, but get the fundamentals correct. The final point is أن يراعي كل من المتعلم والمعلم الآخر, is for both the student and the teacher to take care of the other. خصوصا الأول, especially the student. لأن معلمه كالأب, because their teacher is like their father. بل أعظم, rather greater. لأن أباه أخرجه من دار الفناء, because لأن أباه أخرجه إلى دار الفناء, because their biological parents have brought them forth into the perishing world. ومعلمه دله على دار البقاء, but their teacher has guided them to the abode of eternity, because their teacher has guided them to the abode of eternity. Of course, it's not that you neglect your parents because of your teacher. No. And any teacher that's calling you to neglect your parents is someone you should flee from. The Shaykh Salih bin Siddina, the Mauritanian scholar, we call each other on a monthly basis. Usually him calling me, because I have no telephonic adab. I keep my phone on do not disturb, and my messages, please send me a text message or email me. But every time he'll call, the first question he asks, how are your parents? Are they happy with you? Are they pleased with you? Are you taking care of them? And he always quotes these lines of poetry that your parents take care of their rights and do not give precedence to their rights with anyone else's rights. Right? And the sunnah is أعطي كل ذي حق حقه. Give everyone who has their right their due rights. So in terms of respect and deference in religious matters, in spiritual matters, one defers to one's teachers. But in worldly attention, one give precedence to one's parents. If you had $100 to spend, you spend it on your parents before you spend it on your teacher. Right? And there's different rights that the parents have over the teacher. Right? But the Sunnah teaches you how to have a right balance between all rights. Right? And this is one of the keys to knowledge. People whom Allah gives tawfiq in their knowledge have deep love deep respect, and they serve their teachers with the true meaning of service, which is that they direct the benefit that their teachers gave them with rightful appreciation towards the aspirations that their teachers had. And from those rights is that one, so the teacher takes care of the interests of the student in helping them gain knowledge and benefit from that knowledge. And the student's concern for the teacher is to assist the teacher in fulfilling their aims and aspirations of conveying benefit. That's a service to one's teachers. It's not like you go run errands for them. Maybe you do, but it's that you assist them in fulfilling their aims in teaching. And that's why they say, مَنْ لَمْ يَخْدَمْ يَنْدَمْ. Whoever does not serve, regrets. So these were 12 adab of knowledge, 12 conditions of knowledge that we wanted to highlight that give us very important broad guidelines and reminders, right, on how to go about studying. We'll take a couple of questions before we close, inshallah. Yes?
So if you do not have any judge teaching or anything, like you have to worry about like giving, like sharing knowledge with anyone else or telling them or.
So if you don't feel you've attained anything, then you don't have to do you not have to worry about conveying anything? No, that's not correct. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ballighu anni walau ayah." Convey from me, even if it be one verse. Right? Even if it be one verse. But what does that mean? That does not necessarily mean you go around teaching people. Let me tell you. Right? Right? Rather, you know how, and one of the ways of doing that is to connect people with benefit. And we've seen from some of the greatest scholars of the ummah, you ask them a question and they'll point you to someone else. Right? So yearly I have a ritual at RAS. I couldn't this year because I didn't go due to personal circumstances. But yearly, Shaykh Ramzi visits RAS like for one day. He'll be around. So every time when I notice him, someone who comes and asks a question, I'll send them to Shaykh Ramzi. If it's a spiritual question, it's a question for I say, you know that tall Shaykh over there? Go ask him. And inevitably, it's like an inside joke. He'll send someone who has like a fiqh type question, say, you know that Shaykh over there? Go ask him. Right? But one of the ways is to is to share what you know to be of clear benefit. To share it with others. That's part of the rights of knowledge. Right? That لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you believes until they wish for others of the good that they wish for themselves. And very often we feel shy about that. And one way of having humility in spreading benefit is you don't have to do it yourself. So share that benefit with others. The other is one has to have part of concern for the ummah of the Messenger ﷺ is one's concern about their religious good. Right? And everyone has circles, or should have circles, family or friends, that one could benefit. And very often we don't. We just say, well, it's their choice. No. One is concerned for their good. So everyone should be thinking, how do I benefit those around me? In a manner that will be of benefit. So that's something that, one of the things to consult about. That how do I benefit my family? And there's ways to do it. And sometimes it's counterintuitive. When I was going to visit some family overseas, I consulted one of my teachers, and his advice was, he listened to the circumstances, don't talk to them about, if you want to benefit them in their deen, don't talk to them at all about religion. I said, could you explain? And he explained. It was amazing. Amazing advice. He said, show complete disinterest in anything religious. It was really counterintuitive. It was amazing. Because pretty much all those people now, like I'm there, like they always, if they have a religious question, they ask me. And it's a means of helping, at least some of them, connect. But there's different ways in different circumstances. So that's one of the things that one considers. None of you believes until they wish for others of the good that they wish for themselves. How do you know how you can convey that good? That's one of the things that should be part of our active concern. Right? Religion itself is sincere concern for the good of others. So that's one of the questions, and it's a moral question. Right? A person of genuine concern would wonder, how do I maximize the good in my life? A person of concern doesn't just give any charity. They think, what charity will be of most benefit? And and of course there's Islamic principles related to that, but if you look at the ethics of giving charity, it's a serious question. And there's a lot of deep thought given. A lot of it unguided by revelation, so it's faltering. That should we spend on charity locally or should we send it overseas? That's an ethical question. Where would the greatest benefit be? Should I spend $100 on buying a microwave here for Syrian refugees, or should I send the $100 to a camp in Jordan or in Turkey? How do you judge? But one is concerned about benefit. Similarly, if one learns a little bit, one says, okay, what is the right of this knowledge upon me? First, and they say broadly, one, learn it properly. Number two, act on it soundly. And number three, convey that benefit to others. How? You consult. You consult. Right? This is why the advice, we'll close with this. One of my close friends, when he was going overseas to study, before he went overseas, one of the great scholars of our time, Mufti Rafi Usmani, the Grand Mufti of Pakistan, and he's past 80 now. He came to Toronto. This is in the 90s. So my friend consulted him about what advice do you have about study. He said, always remain under the shade of the people of Allah. Okay? Always remain under the shade of the people of Allah. Right? And that's important. And it's not just something like just be a feeble cat. Well, cats aren't feeble, but like just be a feeble little creature. That's sort of, I am a nothing, and but rather it's empowering. You consult. Your consultation is empowering because it gives you clarity and it gives you confidence about doing the right thing and in doing it in the right way, with the right purpose, towards the right benefit. So that's one of the things. And that's what it's in common hadith of the Prophet. مَا خَابَ مَنِ اسْتَشَارَ. No one who consults feels remorse regarding it. So we'll stop there. بإذن الله تعالى. وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.